As has become standard whenever I make videos specifically involving him, I will attempt to pronounce the fourth prince's name once and only once. After that, it's terror sandwich all the way through. Alright? Alright. A while ago I made the How to Counter Fourth Prince Tserriednich video, wherein I went into some of the best abilities a generic Nen combatant could use in order to have the best chance of killing the psychopathic, gore-mongering, future-seeing Nen genius that is Kakin's fourth prince. I think I was still in that headspace a few weeks later when this idea hit me like a truck, and I'm very glad the channel's members ended up voting for it. Plug. See, while the biggest obstacle to successfully defeating Terror Sandwich, that feels right, indeed lies in overcoming his future sight, it's far from being the only problem a potential combatant might face. In the aforementioned video, I mostly focused on how my imagined challenger could bypass Terror's ephemeral 10 seconds, which of course allows him to see 10 seconds into the future. But in the context of the story proper, there's also the problem of A, the direct combat capability of his guardian spirit beast, which is as of yet unknown, but could prove quite formidable. B, the GSB's indirect combat capability and utility, which would be dependent on the quality and quantity of the corrupted human thralls it could create. For example, if a fully corrupted and manipulated Theta was still able to use her Nen, that'd be pretty damn powerful, regardless of how combat-focused her ability actually was. So far as I recall, the only person we know capable of manipulating someone and them still having access to their Nen was Pito. And C, his monstrous rate of improvement means that if he is given just a few more weeks to improve his Nen, even without his Hatsu and Guardian Spirit Beast, he could become a genuine threat to even middle-level Nen combatants, which is genuinely insane. Imagine reaching Knuckles or Shoot's level of Nen combat prowess in less than a month. Given his level of talent, raw aura output, awakened Hatsu, and Guardian Spirit Beast, there may soon be very few individuals aboard the Black Whale actually capable of bringing down this absolute degenerate in 1v1 combat. The worst thing is that even if he were to come across those Nen combatants with not only the experience and intellect to realize what Terror was doing, but also the tactical acumen and the Nen skillsets to actually do something to counter a guy that can see the future and effectively trap the people around him in said future, such as probably Krollo, almost definitely Beyond, and most likely some of the Zodiacs, Terror's future sight would allow him to realize he was fighting an uphill battle and easily disengage and retreat to amass even more power, experience, and monstrous thralls, supposing his pride would allow him. As you can see, Terror is a menace. He isn't unkillable, and his hubris and lack of experience could prove to be exploitable weaknesses, but I really needed to communicate just how overtuned he'd be given the time to improve unhindered. That said, I believe that a sadistic deviant is unknowingly very close to meeting the single person with the very particular set of skills capable of giving him the gruesome death he deserves. And that someone is none other than Melody. Ever since people connected Terror's idea of the synthesis of the arts, i.e. the pain and suffering people with a bright future, particularly young, attractive women, exhibit when put in extremely violent situations involving torture, mutilation, and eventual death, to Terror's interest in Melody and her connection to the Sonata of Darkness, theories have popped off connecting the fourth prince in some way to the Sonata and thus Melody. Everything from out there and, in my eyes, quite unlikely theories such as Terror's Nen Beast actually being the devil or evil entity responsible for the composition and or power of the Sonata of Darkness made manifest, which seems to have come about due to his Nen Beast's demonic appearance and the 666 symbol on its front, to, in comparison, significantly more grounded and incredibly likely ones, such as Terror simply having an interest in, or even owning, one of the malefic compositions Melody is searching to destroy. Do note that there are 4 compositions, specifically those for the piano, violin, harp, and flute. Melody was disfigured and attained supernatural hearing upon hearing a single movement of the flute version, while her unnamed friend, who actually played it, died horribly. Now, even if Terror didn't own a single composition, he'd absolutely at least have a profound interest in the Dark Sonata, as he'd undoubtedly see it as the ultimate synthesis of the arts, directly connecting artistic expression in the form of a masterful musical composition with the unprecedented suffering, disfigurement, and death of those people unfortunate enough to play and hear it. I'm sure he'd like nothing more than to sit in a soundproof room, sip wine, and watch as the sonata was played by one performer after the other, killing them in the process and causing unimaginable pain and suffering to those forced to hear it. Don't get me wrong, he'd be absolutely miffed at the fact that he couldn't hear it himself, or else risk disfigurement. But someone as arrogant and as concerned with aesthetics as him would never risk that, I believe. If you needed any additional convincing that Terror would have a profound interest in it, keep in mind that the degenerate's guardian spirit beast seemingly has the ability to warp and turn people into malformed inhuman monsters, which would most likely come to resemble the disturbing appearance of the GSB itself. And since GSBs are reflections of their host's innermost wants and desires, it's not difficult to see how the Sonata of Darkness would have Terror jumping for joy like a little princess whose daddy just bought her the bestest pony ever. Just imagine a chibi Terror, give him a tiara, a little sundress, and there you go. You're welcome. Now, if we choose to follow this setup, there are two ways things could go, out of which I prefer one. I'll go into that one first, in annoying detail of course, and then I'll only briefly mention the other since it's not as interesting and I have very little to say about it. So, I actually think that this irredeemable sadist who primly packages his wanton desire for inducing pain and suffering in the self-serving moronic notion that is his synthesis of the arts will meet a very poetic and horrendously terrifying end at the very thing he'd want most in the world: the Sonata of Darkness. I envision a scenario where things get bad. Theta sacrifices herself in a last-ditch attempt to kill Terror, only to be turned into an inhuman monster under the prince's control. Things escalate as more and more princes meet their ends, and Terror begins to amass a small personal guard of freakish aberrations as the demon prince looks to be unstoppable and the clear favorite for winning the succession war. Enter Melody. Melody, feeling responsible for, at the very least, 10th Prince Kacho's, and at that point in the story, possibly 11th Prince Fugetsu's death as well, and tired of seeing so much suffering caused by the succession war in general, but particularly the 4th Prince, offers to accept his standing invitation to perform a masterful piece for him in exchange for something. Perhaps her colleague's safety. The prince, high on his own power and perceived invincibility, delightedly accepts, being certain of the fact that he essentially cannot be surprised as long as he activates his foresight. As Melody enters and the prince activates his ephemeral 10 seconds in order to glimpse the future, he is suddenly stopped in his tracks as he hears a beautifully haunting melody. The most exquisitely insidious tune he has ever heard. Darkness, pain, and suffering made manifest in the form of a musical composition. A single movement of the sonata would be all it would take. Terror would find himself writhing on the floor, unable to stand or think. His mind would, for the briefest of moments, be enraptured in awe, while at the same time, his body would be convulsing in agony as the prince's horrifying metamorphosis began. Melody, a music hunter and someone already exposed to its harrowing effects, would play the sonata for as long as she could manage, knowing full well that she will die in the process, but taking solace in the fact that the wannabe Demon King will have the chance to meet a true fiend. Terror's focus would break, and as his elation finally subsided and only pain was left, he'd regain his senses enough to at least comprehend the physical abomination he had become, as now his outside appearance was aligned with what was inside the whole time. Terror would find himself living out the remainder of his seconds, hours, days, months, or years in a state worse than death. That felt good to write. Now I know what you're thinking. Since we know that Melody's Hatsu can be countered by simply covering your ears, and since Terror would see it coming via his ability, wouldn't he just avoid it by either covering his ears or running away? He'd absolutely be wary of and prepared for a potential Nen attack in this scenario after all. See, the thing is that A. Terror wouldn't see it coming. He'd hear it coming. And B, what would follow would be an effect entirely beyond the scope of anything Melody by herself would be capable of producing, or what Terror had experienced up until then. After all, it's a piece of music malicious and powerful enough that people believe it was supposedly composed by the devil himself. Furthermore, unless given reason to think otherwise, the prince would most likely think himself immune to the effects of melodies while using his foresight, since he would be viewing the future from his Nen beast perspective, and thus borrowing its senses instead of using his own. This, while a most likely valid assumption regarding Melody's own abilities, such as a field of spring, which the prince had already experienced, would prove faulty in this specific case. The moment he'd hear the Sonata of Darkness, his deviant mind would be enraptured by it, and he'd find himself utterly stupefied. In the best case for Melody, Terror's transformation would initiate immediately, as the sonata proved itself pervasive and potent enough to affect his actual self, which was technically in the past, as regardless of how or when he'd be hearing it nonetheless. If this happened, Melody may, paradoxically, not actually even need to play it, as her determination to do so would already have manifested that future in Terror's mind via his ability, and he'd be suffering the effects in real time because of it. This would spare Melody her unnamed friend's fate, but would nonetheless produce the result she had intended. At worst for Melody, enraptured by the sonata, Terror would lose focus and release his ability early, as he'd be stunned and unable to do anything for the few seconds needed for his future to catch up to him, as Melody began to play the sonata in real time. In that moment, the fourth prince's ability would turn from a boon that allowed him to see and control his future to a cursed, self-fulfilling prophecy. By the way, that was just one potential scenario in which the sonata could be used to neutralize Terror. Do note that we know the manipulative effects of Melody's baseline Hatsu can be emitted through speakers, and this is the Sonata of Darkness we're talking about. If Melody played it, it would very likely work through a speaker, even if its effects may be diminished. Such a powerful curse and probable application of post-mortem Nen is practically guaranteed to affect anyone who hears it, even if the performance is not live. But again, particularly if Melody is the one who does it. As such, if it came to it, they could just broadcast her playing the sonata exclusively to the fourth prince's quarters, or some such. There's also the slim chance that Melody's baseline ability may be the perfect counter to Terror as is, since its effects may work in the same way I described the sonatas would, and could stun him for long enough for someone wearing earplugs to kill him, but that's neither here nor there. Finally, the other, for me much less captivating way things could go, is that, since he isn't hearing it himself but through his Nen beast senses, Terror indeed wouldn't be affected by the sonata while perceiving it through his ephemeral 10 seconds. While I personally wouldn't prefer this, since I think the horrifying fate I outlined for him would be supremely poetic and quite honestly satisfying, it is entirely possible that his ability makes it so that Terror becomes the only person actually capable of listening to the sonata without being cursed by it. As in, he could simply shut his actual ears and then listen to it through his Nen beast senses, all the while his monstrous creations fed him wine and cheese, or whatever rich people do when enjoying the fruits of their most depraved impulses. The issue, of course, would be that there'd be no one to play it, since based on what Melody said, playing a single movement of it is enough for it to kill some people. Because of that, and because quite frankly I think it'd be a bit too much from both a power scaling and narrative standpoint, I am genuinely hoping he gets turned into a disgusting slug-like abomination. And that's my theory and borderline fanfic on the most poetic, karmic, and to me personally satisfying final fate of the fourth Prince of Kakin. Talking about Terra's future sight always gets confusing, and I'm genuinely hoping you could follow my train of thought here. It's not very intuitive, to say the least. Do you have any ideas with regards to what fate will befall the one and only Terror Sandwich? Will he win or lose, live or die? Feel more than free to share your thoughts down below. Before signing off, I'd very much like to thank the thinkers and overthinkers for going the extra mile in supporting the channel. As always, thank you very much for watching, your feedback is always appreciated, subscribe if you'd like more content like this, and I'll see you in the next one.